When the world's richest tech genius receives a mysterious invitation from Pope Francis, no one expects it to change anything. Elon Musk builds rockets and electric cars. He doesn't have time for religious meetings. But on a spring morning in May, a cream-colored envelope arrives on his desk that will alter the course of his life. Inside the Vatican's walls, away from cameras and reporters, the Pope asks Elon a question so simple yet so profound that it shakes the foundation of everything he's built. What would you create if you weren't afraid? As Elon's empire faces a crisis that demands his immediate attention, he must make an impossible choice. Will he remember the boy he once was and the dreams he left behind? And what is the secret hidden in the ancient mirror that might reveal his true purpose? Elon Musk stared at the cream-colored envelope on his desk. It had no return address, just his name written in neat, flowing handwriting. The paper felt thick and expensive between his fingers. "Layla, who brought this?" he called out. His assistant, Layla Chen, appeared in the doorway. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she held a tablet computer like it was part of her arm. "A courier delivered it personally, Mr. Musk. He wouldn't say who sent him, just that it was important." Elon turned the envelope over. It was sealed with red wax stamped with a symbol he didn't recognize. He broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Mr. Elon Musk, I request the honor of your presence for a private meeting at the Vatican on Friday, May 15th. There are matters of great importance I wish to discuss with you personally. With sincere regards, Pope Francis." Elon read it twice, then handed it to Layla. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked. Layla studied the letter. "The paper has the Vatican watermark, and that's the Pope's official seal. I think it's real." Elon leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the busy factory floor below. Workers were assembling the newest electric vehicle model. He had meetings all week, problems to solve, and decisions to make. A trip to Rome wasn't in his plans. Why would the Pope want to meet with me? I'm not even Catholic. "Should I check if it's legitimate?" Layla asked. "Yes, find out what this is about." While Layla made calls, Elon tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to the letter. Pope Francis was known for surprising people. He rode in a small car instead of fancy ones. He washed the feet of prisoners. But why reach out to a tech CEO who built rockets and electric cars? An hour later, Layla returned. "It's real. I spoke with Archbishop Domingo at the Vatican. He confirmed Pope Francis has requested a meeting with you, but he wouldn't say why." Elon tapped his fingers on the desk. "Tell them I'm busy." "I already tried that approach," the Archbishop said, and I quote, "Pope Francis specifically asked for Mr. Musk and believes this meeting would benefit them both." Elon frowned. He didn't like mysteries. In his world, things had purpose. Rockets had to reach orbit. Cars had to drive safely. Solar panels had to collect energy. What was the purpose of this meeting? "Mr. Musk, your schedule is actually clear that day. You were going to visit the Berlin factory, but Mr. Steinman can handle the inspection." Layla swiped through her tablet. "You could fly to Rome Thursday night, meet with the Pope Friday morning, and be back for Saturday's launch." Elon stood up and paced around his office. The walls were lined with models of rockets and cars. On his desk sat a Mars globe and a photo of his children. "Fine, tell them I'll come. But I want to know what this is about before I get there." "I'll try again," Layla said, though her expression suggested she didn't expect different results. Over the next few days, Elon found himself thinking about the meeting more than he wanted to admit. He even caught himself reading articles about Pope Francis late at night. The Pope had taken the name Francis after St. Francis of Assisi, who cared for the poor. He spoke about climate change and helping refugees. He seemed to care about the future of humanity. Maybe that's why he wanted to meet, to talk about using technology to help people. Thursday arrived quickly. As Elon boarded his private jet, Layla handed him a folder. Everything you need to know about Vatican protocol. How to address the Pope. Proper etiquette. What to wear. "I'm not going to kiss his ring," Elon said. Layla smiled. "It says here he doesn't usually ask visitors to do that anyway." As the plane prepared for takeoff, Elon's phone buzzed. It was Oscar, his chief engineer at the rocket company. "Boss, we might have a problem with the oxygen valves on tomorrow's launch. The pressure readings are inconsistent." Elon frowned. "How inconsistent?" "Enough that I'm concerned. We're running diagnostics now, but we might need to delay. Keep me updated. If you need me to come back, I will." As the plane took off, Elon stared out the window. The ground fell away, and clouds surrounded the aircraft. For a moment, his ever-busy mind went quiet. What if he needed to cancel the meeting with the Pope? Part of him felt relief at the thought. Another part felt disappointed. He realized he was curious about what the leader of the Catholic Church could possibly want to discuss. With him, his phone buzzed again with work messages. A decision needed on the new battery factory. A design question about the Mars habitat plans. Software problems in the latest car update. Elon answered each message, made each decision. But in the back of his mind, questions about tomorrow's meeting kept spinning. What did the Pope want? Why him? What could a religious leader and a tech CEO possibly have to talk about that was so important? "Mr. Musk?" Layla interrupted his thoughts. "Would you like to review the quarterly reports before we land?" Elon nodded, but as he took the reports, another message came through from Oscar. "Problem getting worse. Might need your input on a major decision soon." Elon sighed and typed back, "I'll be available. Do what you need to until then." He looked out the window again. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in bright orange and pink. Somewhere ahead was Rome and the Vatican, and a mysterious meeting that might not even happen if the oxygen valves couldn't be fixed. For a man who planned rockets to Mars and envisioned humans becoming a multi-planet species, Elon Musk suddenly felt uncertain about what tomorrow would bring. "Layla," he said, "what do you think the Pope wants to talk about?" She considered the question carefully. "Maybe he sees something in you that you don't see in yourself." Elon raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like you." "My grandmother was Catholic," Layla said with a small smile. "She always said God works in mysterious ways." "Well," Elon replied, looking back at his phone as another message came in, "so do oxygen valves, apparently." As the plane flew on toward Rome, Elon Musk prepared himself for either possibility. A meeting that might change him in ways he couldn't imagine, or a quick return to the problems he knew how to solve. Elon closed his eyes as the plane continued its journey across the dark Atlantic. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept racing between rocket valves and mysterious papal invitations. He pulled out his tablet and flipped through photos of his company's achievements. Electric cars rolling off assembly lines, rockets returning to Earth and landing perfectly, solar panels covering rooftops, internet satellites orbiting the planet. "I've done all this," he whispered to himself in the quiet cabin. "So why doesn't it feel like enough?" The question surprised him. He rarely allowed himself such thoughts. There was always the next goal, the next innovation, the next problem to solve. But here, suspended between continents, the question floated, up like a bubble that couldn't be pushed back down. Elon's mind drifted to his childhood in South Africa. The young boy who read science fiction books until the pages wore thin. Who built rockets from cardboard when other kids played sports. Who dreamed of changing the world. Had he changed the world? Yes, in many ways. But had he changed it enough? In the right ways? A memory surfaced, his father's voice. "You're wasting your time with these fantasies." Elon pushed the memory away. He had proved his father wrong many times over. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments like this, the old doubts crept back. "Mr. Musk?" Layla stood in the aisle. "We'll be landing in an hour. There's someone waiting to meet. You at the airport." "Who?" "The Vatican sent a representative. Someone named Sister Margot." Elon nodded and looked out the window. The first hints of dawn touched the horizon. Somewhere below, Rome was waking up. When they landed, a short woman in simple black clothes waited at the bottom of the plane's stairs. Her gray hair was cut in a practical style, and she wore no makeup. Only a small silver cross around her neck identified her as a nun. "Mr. Musk, welcome to Rome. I'm Sister Margot." Her handshake was firm, her English perfect, with just a hint of an Italian accent. "You're my guide?" Elon asked, surprised. He had expected someone more official-looking. Sister Margot smiled. "Pope Francis prefers simplicity. This way, please." A plain black car waited on the tarmac, not the luxury vehicle Elon was accustomed to when traveling. "We have arranged a brief tour on the way to your hotel, if you're not too tired," Sister Margot said as they settled in the back seat. "I don't need a tour. I've been to Rome before." "As a tourist, perhaps. But have you seen the real Rome?" Before Elon could answer, his phone buzzed. It was Oscar again. "Boss, good news. We found the valve problem. It's fixable, but we'll need to push the launch back 48 hours. Relief washed over Elon. He wouldn't have to rush back immediately. "Handle it, Oscar. I trust you." He put the phone away and noticed Sister Margot watching him. "Problem solved?" she asked. "For now." Elon looked out the window as the car drove through the awakening city. "So, what does Pope Francis want with me?" "You must know." Sister Margot's face revealed nothing. "His Holiness will explain everything." "I don't like mysteries." "Life itself is a mystery, Mr. Musk. Even for a man who builds rockets." The car turned down a narrow street, where old buildings pressed close on both sides. Morning light painted, the ancient stones gold. 8 civilizations have called Rome home, Sister Margot said. 8 rises and falls. Rome teaches us that nothing lasts forever. Not empires, not fortunes. "That's why I'm working on Mars," Elon said. "Humanity needs a backup plan." Sister Margot nodded. "A noble goal. But is it your only one?" The question caught him off guard. Before he could respond, she reached into her bag and took out a small wooden box about the size of his palm. "His Holiness asked me to give you this." Elon took the box. It was simple, but beautifully made, warm to the touch. "What's inside?" "That's between you and Pope Francis. But he asks that you not open it until after your meeting tomorrow." Elon turned the box over in his hands. It had no lock, just a simple hinge. It would be easy to open now. "Will you honor his request?" Sister Margot asked, watching him closely. After a moment, Elon put the box in his jacket pocket. "For now." Phi-C. Car stopped at an intersection. An old man was selling flowers to morning commuters. Sister Margot rolled down her window and bought a small bunch of daisies, exchanging a few words in Italian with the seller. The man's weathered face broke into a smile at whatever she said. "You speak as if you know them all," Elon observed as They drove on. "Rome is a small city at heart," she replied. "Everyone has a story worth knowing." As they approached the hotel, Elon's phone buzzed again. More problems needed his attention. More decisions waited, but his fingers kept returning to the wooden box in his pocket. And he found himself strangely eager for tomorrow to arrive. "I'll collect you at 9 in the morning," Sister Margot said as the car stopped at the hotel entrance. "Pope Francis is looking forward to your conversation." "So am I," Elon replied, surprising himself with how true the words felt. After a few hours of sleep and countless emails, Elon met Sister Margot in the hotel lobby the next morning. She wore the same simple black clothes, but today carried a worn leather bag over her shoulder. "I thought we might walk for part of our tour," she said. "Rome is best experienced on foot." The morning was cool and bright. They passed cafes where locals sipped espresso and tourists studied maps. Sister Margot led him down narrow streets that twisted between buildings hundreds of years old. "The Romans built roads that lasted millennia," she said. "What are you building that will last that long, Mr. Musk?" "Technology becomes outdated," Elon replied. "The point isn't to build things that last forever, but to push humanity forward." An interesting perspective. They turned a corner and suddenly faced the massive stone remains of the Colosseum. Morning light streamed through its ancient arches. The emperors who built this thought their empire would never end. Sister Margot said, "They couldn't imagine a world without Rome at its center." Elon studied the ruins. They didn't innovate enough. Societies that don't evolve die. Perhaps. But some things need preservation, not innovation. Before Elon could ask what she meant, a ragged voice called out, "Margot, my friend!" A thin man with a gray beard and tattered clothes waved from a bench nearby. Sister Margot smiled broadly and walked over to him. Elon followed, keeping a careful distance. "Tonio, how are you?" Sister Margot clasped the man's hand warmly. "Better now that spring is here. My bones don't like the cold." Tonio's eyes shifted to Elon. "Who's your rich friend?" Sister Margot chuckled. "This is Mr. Musk. He has a meeting with Pope Francis." Tonio's eyes widened. "The Rocket Man! I've seen you on the news." He studied Elon with surprising intensity. "You're building a path to the stars." "Something like that," Elon replied, uncomfortable with the man's direct gaze. Sister Margot reached into her bag and handed Tonio a sandwich wrapped in paper and a small thermos. "Soup today, and new socks in the bottom of the bag." "You're an angel, Margot." Tonio took the items gratefully. "How's the leg?" she asked. "Healing slowly. The doctor at the clinic says I'm lucky. You know where to find me if you need anything else." As they turned to leave, Tonio called out to Elon, "Hey, Rocket Man!" Elon looked back. "All those billions. Are you happy?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Elon simply stared. Before he could formulate an answer, Sister Margot gently led him away. "Tonio speaks his mind," she said. "He was a philosophy professor before life took a difficult turn. You seem to know him well." The Huti Church runs a shelter where he sometimes stays. "Everyone has value, Mr. Musk. Everyone has a story." They walked in silence until they reached a small plaza with a fountain. Children played while parents watched from benches. "May I ask you something?" Elon said finally. "You don't seem like typical Vatican staff. What's your background?" Sister Margot smiled. "Before I joined the order, I was chief operating officer at a tech company in Silicon Valley." Elon stopped walking. "You're joking." "Not at all. 15 years at Horizon Technologies. We made some of the first smartphone chips. I know Horizon. They were acquired by Novatech in 2015. Yes. Sister Margot sat on a bench and invited Elon to join her. I led the acquisition team. And you gave all that up to become a nun? Elon couldn't hide his disbelief. I didn't see it as giving up. I saw it as finding something more valuable. She looked at the children playing nearby. Success is relative. Mr. Musk, I had everything the world said should make me happy. But you weren't. I was climbing a ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Sister Margot checked her watch. We should continue. There's one more place I want to show you before we head to the Vatican. As they walked, Elon found himself studying Sister Margot with new interest. She had walked away from the kind of success he had spent his life pursuing. And yet, she seemed more at peace than anyone he knew in his world of technology and wealth. The wooden box felt heavy in his pocket. Tomorrow's meeting with the Pope suddenly seemed more significant, more personal. Perhaps there was something here in the Eternal City that he needed to learn. Something that all his money and brilliance hadn't taught him. Back at his hotel, Elon stood by the window watching night fall over Rome. Lights flickered on across the ancient city, stars appeared above, and his mind wouldn't stop spinning. His phone buzzed again. Oscar was sending hourly updates about the valve issue. The launch delay was confirmed, but new problems had emerged. The investors were getting nervous. Should I book a flight home tonight? Layla asked from the doorway. Elon hesitated. The logical choice was clear. Go back, fix the problems, reschedule this strange meeting for another time. That's what the BBB, old Elon, would have done without question. No, he said finally. Let's stick with the plan. I'll meet the Pope tomorrow. Layla raised an eyebrow but nodded. I'll let them know. After she left, Elon ordered dinner to his room, but barely touched it. He answered emails, approved designs, studied reports, his normal routine. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Sister Margot and her unexpected past. To Tonio's blunt question about happiness, to the wooden box that sat now on his nightstand. Satiki, box seemed to call to him. Sister Margot had said not to open it until after meeting the Pope, but why? What secret could be inside? His fingers traced the smooth edges, the simple craftsmanship. This is ridiculous, he muttered to himself. He was a man of science and reason, not mystery and ritual. He picked up the box and opened it. Inside was a small, round mirror no bigger than his palm. The glass was slightly wavy, the silver backing tarnished with age. It looked antique, possibly hundreds of years old. Elon lifted it out, disappointed. Just a mirror? He turned it over, looking for hidden compartments or secret messages, but found nothing. Just an old mirror in a wooden box. He held it up and saw his reflection. Tired eyes, worry lines he hadn't noticed before. Was this some kind of trick? A message about vanity? His phone rang, breaking the moment. It was Oscar again. Boss, we have a bigger problem. The guidance system is showing errors in testing. If we can't resolve it, we might be looking at weeks of delay, not days. Elon's stomach tightened. This was serious. The rocket company had deadlines to meet, contracts that included penalty clauses, investors who demanded results. Send me the diagnostics, all of them. For the next 2 hours, Elon buried himself in technical data. He sent instructions, asked questions, proposed solutions. This was his element, solving concrete problems with tangible answers, not philosophical questions about happiness or mysterious mirrors in wooden boxes. By midnight, the situation looked grim. The guidance system needed a complete recalibration, possibly replacement parts. Weeks of delay seemed certain. "Mr. Musk," Oscar's voice was tense. "The team thinks you should be here. Your presence makes a difference." Elon rubbed his eyes. "Book the flight, Layla," he called, knowing she was still working in the next room. "We leave first thing tomorrow morning." "What about the Pope?" she asked, appearing in the doorway. "Send apologies. Reschedule if possible." He waved his hand dismissively. "He'll understand. This is the real world." Layla nodded and left to make arrangements. Elon turned back to his computer, but the words blurred on the screen. He needed air. Opening the balcony door, he stepped out into the cool Roman night. The city spread before him, a mixture of ancient and modern. Domes and spires from centuries past stood alongside modern buildings. History and progress existing side by side. Movement below caught his eye. In the small piazza beside the hotel, an elderly man sat on a bench with a young boy, maybe 10 years old. The boy was showing the old man something on a tablet computer. The man shook his head, confused, and the boy patiently took the tablet back, tapped a few times and showed him again. This time the old man's face lit up with understanding, and they both laughed. Something about the scene struck Elon deeply. The patient exchange between generations, the sharing of knowledge, the simple joy of connection. His mind flashed to his own children. When had he last sat with them like that? When had he last laughed so freely? Tonio's question echoed in his mind. "All those billions. Are you happy?" Elon pulled out his phone and stared at it. One call would set the machinery in motion. Private jet fueled and ready, schedule cleared, meeting canceled. The responsible choice, the expected choice. Instead, he found himself typing a message to Oscar. "Keep working the problem. I'll who. Join remotely in the morning. My meeting stands." He surprised himself with the decision, but it felt right. One more day wouldn't change the company's fate, and something told him this meeting with Pope Francis might be more important than he had realized. Back inside, Elon noticed the mirror still lying on the desk. He picked it up again and studied his reflection. The same face looked back, but somehow different. Questioning, searching. He carefully placed the mirror back in its wooden box and closed the lid. Whatever message it contained, perhaps it would make more sense after tomorrow's meeting. As he prepared for bed, his phone lit up with Layla's text. Sister Margot confirmed, 9 a.m. at the Vatican. "Are you sure about this?" Elon typed back, "Yes." Sleep came slowly. In the space between wakefulness and dreams, faces floated through his mind. Sister Margot, Tonio, the old man and boy in the piazza, and his own face, reflected in that strange old mirror, asking silent questions he couldn't quite hear. When morning came, Elon woke with unusual clarity. He dressed carefully, following Layla's notes about appropriate attire for a papal audience. As he slipped the wooden box into his jacket pocket, he felt a strange sense of anticipation, almost like excitement. "Ready?" Layla asked when he emerged from his room. "As I'll ever be," he replied. Outside, Sister Margot waited with her same calm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Musk. His Holiness is looking forward to your conversation." The drive to Vatican City was short. As they approached the towering walls and saw the dome of St. Peter's Basilica rising against the morning sky, Elon felt an unexpected flutter of nervousness. He, who had faced boardrooms and launched rockets and built global companies, was suddenly anxious about meeting one elderly man in a white robe. "Relax," Sister Margot said, noticing his tension. Pope Francis is a good listener. Just be honest with him." "About what?" Elon asked. Sister Margot smiled. "About whatever is truly in your heart." Elon didn't have a response to Sister Margot's words. What was truly in his heart? He rarely asked himself that question. Their car stopped at a side entrance to Vatican City, away from the tourists lining up to visit St. Peter's Basilica. A Swiss guard in his colorful uniform checked their names against a list and waved them through. "These aren't the public areas, Sister," Margot explained as they walked down a quiet corridor. "Pope Francis prefers to meet visitors away from the grandeur when possible." Elon had expected more. Everything. More security, more ceremony, more gold and marble. Instead, they moved through simple hallways where priests, nuns, and Vatican employees nodded respectfully to Sister Margot as they passed. "I thought the Vatican would be all ancient art and ceremonies," Elon said. "Oh, we have plenty of that too," Sister Margot replied with a smile. "The Church preserves tradition, but we also embrace useful technology." She led him through a doorway into a large room filled with computers and giant screens. Young people from many countries worked at desks, speaking multiple languages. Some wore religious clothing, others dressed in casual business attire. "Our Humanitarian Response Center," Sister Margot explained. "We coordinate aid to crisis zones worldwide. When an earthquake struck Indonesia last month, this team helped direct resources within hours." Elon watched as a woman in a headscarf directed a video meeting with field workers. On the wall, screens displayed maps with real-time data from refugee, camps, and disaster areas. "Impressive operations center," he said, genuinely surprised. "The Church has been gathering and sharing information for 2,000 years, Sister Margot said. "We've had practice." They continued through the Vatican complex. In one courtyard, ancient statues stood beside a modern solar panel array. In another room, conservators used advanced scanning tools to preserve fragile manuscripts. "Did you expect us to reject science, Mr. Musk?" Sister Margot asked, noticing his expression. "I didn't expect this balance," he admitted. She nodded. "Faith and reason are not enemies. Pope Francis often says, science and religion use different languages to speak of the same reality." They approached a simple wooden door guarded by a single Swiss guard. Sister Margot spoke quietly to him, and he stepped aside. "His Holiness is ready to see you," she said to Elon. "I'll wait here." Suddenly, Elon felt that flutter of nervousness again. "What should I say?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. "Just be honest," Sister Margot replied. "Pope Francis values truth above politeness." Elon straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and nodded. The guard opened the door. As Elon stepped forward, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Oscar's name flashed on the screen. The rocket problem. He hesitated for just a moment, then silenced the phone and walked through the doorway. The room beyond was unexpectedly small and simple. Bookshelves lined the walls. A wooden desk held neat stacks of papers. Sunlight streamed through a single window. And there, rising from a plain chair, was Pope Francis. He looked smaller in person than on television. An elderly man with kind eyes and a warm smile. He wore the simple white robes that had become his trademark, without elaborate decoration. "Mr. Musk," the Pope said in lightly accented English, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming all this way to meet with me." Elon shook his hand, surprised by the firm grip. "Thank you for the invitation, Your Holiness. Please sit." The Pope gestured to a chair across from his own. No fancy throne, No ceremony. Just two chairs by a window overlooking a garden. As they sat, Elon noticed the books on the desk. Not just religious texts, but works on science, economics, and philosophy. One book about space exploration caught his eye, with his own company's rocket on the cover. "You've been reading about my work?" he asked. Pope Francis smiled. "I try to stay informed. Your vision for humanity becoming a multiplanetary species is fascinating." Elon hadn't expected the Pope to be familiar with his companies. Most religious leaders don't show much interest in space travel. "The heavens declare the glory of God," the Pope quoted. The psalmist wrote that long before telescopes. Exploration has always been part of the human spirit. He leaned forward slightly. "I've followed your various companies with interest. Electric vehicles to reduce pollution, solar energy to fight climate change, space travel to expand human possibilities. These are noble endeavors." Elon felt unexpectedly pleased by the praise. "Thank you. Yet I wonder," the Pope continued, "if these innovations alone will solve humanity's deepest problems." The question caught Elon off guard. He'd come prepared to explain his work, not defend it. Technology can solve problems. Religion has failed to address for centuries, he said, more sharply than he intended. If Pope Francis was offended, he didn't show it. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps religion addresses questions technology cannot answer. Why are we here? What gives life meaning? What responsibility do we have to one another? Elon shifted in his chair. "I'm focused on ensuring humanity has a future before worrying about philosophical questions." "Are they merely philosophical?" The Pope's gaze was penetrating but kind. "You grew up in South Africa during apartheid. You saw human suffering firsthand. Did that shape your desire to build a better world?" Elon stared at him. How did the Pope know about his childhood? Few people asked about those years. "Sister Margot gave you a box," Pope Francis said, changing the subject. "Did you open it?" Elon hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "And what did you see in the mirror?" "My reflection," Elon replied. "Nothing special." Pope Francis smiled. "Sometimes our reflection is the hardest thing to truly see." He stood and walked to the window. "Come, look at this garden. It was planted 500 years ago. Each pope since then has added something, but kept its essence intact. Progress without destruction. Change with continuity." As Elon joined him at the window, the wooden box felt heavy in his pocket. Something told him that this conversation was about to take an unexpected turn, and that whatever the Pope wanted to discuss went far deeper than rockets or electric cars. "Do you know why I asked you to come here, Mr. Musk?" Pope Francis turned from the window to face Elon directly. "I've been wondering that since I received your letter," Elon admitted. The Pope gestured back to their chairs, and they sat down again. "I have followed your career with interest. You've created remarkable things. Your electric cars are helping to reduce pollution. Your rockets may someday take people to Mars. Your internet satellites bring knowledge to remote places. You're surprisingly well-informed about technology," Elon said. Pope Francis smiled. "The Church cannot live in the past. We must understand the present to help shape a better future." He leaned forward slightly. "But technology itself is neutral. It can heal or harm, connect or isolate, free or enslave. The crucial question is always, does it serve the good of humanity?" "Of course it does," Elon replied. "Electric cars reduce pollution. Space travel ensures humanity's survival. Solar power fights climate change. These are worthy goals, the Pope nodded. But I wonder about the path to achieving them. What do you mean? Your companies push workers to extreme limits. You've said yourself you sometimes work 120 hours a week and sleep on the factory floor. You expect others to match your dedication. Elon frowned. Creating the future isn't easy. If it were, someone else would have done it already. True innovation requires sacrifice, the Pope acknowledged. But at what cost? To the workers who barely see their families? To society when wealth concentrates in fewer hands? To your own children who miss their father? The mention of his children hit Elon like a physical blow. I'm building a better world for them. But will they know you in it? The Pope's question was gentle but direct. Elon stood up and walked back to the window. He wasn't used to being challenged this way. Most people either praised him as a visionary or attacked him as a villain. This careful questioning felt different, more personal, more probing. You asked earlier about my childhood in South Africa, he said finally. Yes, it shaped me. I saw suffering. I saw stagnation. I promised myself I would help build a different world. Pope Francis joined him at the window. A noble aim, and you've accomplished extraordinary things. Few people have changed so many industries in one lifetime. But you think it's not enough, Elon said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. I think the means matter as much as the ends, the Pope replied, and I wonder if your single-minded focus on technological solutions has blinded you to other dimensions of human flourishing. Like what? Connection? Compassion? The inner life of the spirit. The Pope gestured to the garden below. See that old gardener? He's worked here for 40 years. He knows every plant, every season's change. His work brings him deep satisfaction because he sees himself as a caretaker, not a conqueror. Elon watched the white-haired man carefully pruning a rose bush. We don't all have the luxury of tending gardens. Someone has to solve the big problems. Indeed. But the how matters as much as the what. Pope Francis returned to his desk and picked up a letter. Do you know a man named Marco Bellini? The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Elon couldn't place it. I don't think so. My companies employ thousands of people. He worked for your rocket company as an engineer. Brilliant mind. He helped design the propulsion systems for your Mars mission. Now Elon remembered. Tall Italian guy. Quiet. Left about a year ago. He wrote to me before he left your company, the Pope said, holding up the letter. He was troubled by certain decisions being made, safety protocols being shortened, ethical concerns being dismissed in the rush to meet deadlines. Elon's jaw tightened. We never compromise on safety. And one disgruntled employee, he wasn't disgruntled, Mr. Musk. He was heartbroken. Pope Francis's voice remained calm but firm. He believed in your vision, but he saw it being compromised by the pressure to move faster, to beat competitors, to satisfy investors. That's business reality, Elon said. We're trying to revolutionize space travel. It's not easy. No worthy endeavor is easy, the Pope agreed, but the hardest path isn't always the right one. He placed the letter back on his desk. Marco Bellini believed in going to Mars, but he believed even more strongly in the sanctity of human life. He couldn't accept cutting corners that might risk lives, even if those risks were small. We've never had a fatality, Elon pointed out. Thank God for that, the Pope said sincerely. But Marco worried it was just a matter of time. The culture of move fast and break things works for software. For rockets carrying humans? He wasn't so sure. Elon felt a flush of anger. With all due respect, Your Holiness, you don't understand. The technical details or the safety margins we build in. True, Pope Francis nodded. I understand the human heart, not rocket science. And Marco's heart was troubled. Troubled enough that after leaving your company, he dedicated himself to creating safety standards for space travel that he hoped would be adopted industry-wide. I haven't heard of any such standards, Elon said. The Pope's expression grew sad. You wouldn't have. Marco died 3 months ago. A heart attack at age 42. The doctors said it was likely stress-related. The news hit Elon unexpectedly hard. He had barely known the engineer, but something about the story disturbed him deeply. I'm sorry to hear that, he said quietly. He seemed like a good man. He was, and he admired you greatly, despite his concerns. Pope Francis opened a drawer and pulled out a small notebook. He left this with his letter. He asked that if I ever had the chance, I should give it to you. Elon took the notebook. It was filled with technical drawings, equations, and notes in a precise hand. Safety systems, redundancy protocols, alternative designs for life support. He worked on these in his spare time, the Pope explained. He called it his conscience project. Elon flipped through the pages, recognizing brilliant ideas mixed with impractical ones. Marco had been thinking deeply about problems Elon's own teams were still wrestling with. Why are you showing me this? He asked, looking up. Because Marco's story illustrates a larger point, Pope Francis said. Technical progress without moral progress can lead us astray. Moving quickly is good. Moving wisely is better. He leaned forward, his eyes intent. Mr. Musk, you possess extraordinary gifts. Intelligence, vision, determination. You could help solve humanity's greatest challenges. But the how matters deeply. The how, Elon repeated. Do you build the future by driving yourself and others to exhaustion? By focusing solely on technological solutions? By measuring success in dollars and deadlines? The Pope shook his head. Or do you build it through wisdom, collaboration, and respect for human dignity? Elon closed Marco's notebook, his mind spinning. He hadn't expected this conversation, hadn't prepared for these questions. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Oscar calling about the rocket problem, but this time he didn't even notice. You've thought a lot about my work, he said finally. I've thought a lot about your potential, Pope Francis corrected gently. Few people have the resources, intelligence, and determination you possess. What you do with those gifts matters enormously. The wooden box felt heavier than ever in Elon's pocket. And the mirror? What was that about? Pope Francis smiled. We're getting to that. But first, I have something to admit to you. What's that? I'm not perfect either, the Pope said, his eyes crinkling with a self-deprecating smile. The Church makes mistakes. I make mistakes. Sometimes my vision is too small, or I'm too set in old ways. The admission surprised Elon. I wouldn't have expected you to say that. Truth is the foundation of trust, Pope Francis replied. And I hope we can build trust between us, because what I want to discuss next requires it. Elon watched as Pope Francis rose and walked to a small side table. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to Elon. When I was younger, the Pope began, I believed I had all the answers. As a Jesuit priest in Argentina, I was certain about many things. Too certain sometimes. He sat down again, his expression thoughtful. With age comes doubt. Not about faith itself, but about our human understanding of divine purpose. I question myself more now than I did at 30. Elon sipped his water, unsure where this conversation was heading. Most people become more fixed in their views as they age, not less. That's the trap of experience, Pope Francis nodded. We mistake familiarity for understanding. True wisdom often begins with recognizing how little we know. He leaned forward slightly. 3 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. The weight of the church, of all the problems in our world, poverty, war, climate change, it felt overwhelming. I went to the chapel to pray, asking for guidance. And did you receive it? Elon asked, curious despite his skepticism. Not in the way I expected, the Pope smiled. No burning bush or voice from the clouds, just a simple thought. Speak with Elon Musk. Elon raised an eyebrow. Really? You look doubtful, Pope Francis chuckled. I was surprised too, but sometimes inspiration comes in unexpected forms. So God told you to invite me to the Vatican? I believe the Spirit guided me, yes, though I admit the human mind can play tricks. Perhaps I simply realized a conversation between us was overdue. The Pope's honesty was disarming. Elon had expected dogma and certainty from the leader of the Catholic Church, not this humble questioning. What did you hope to achieve by meeting me? Elon asked. To share a burden, Pope Francis replied, his expression growing serious, and to ask for your help. He picked up Marco's letter again. Marco Bellini didn't just write about safety concerns. He wrote about a dream he had, a vision of technology serving humanity's deepest needs, not just its desires. He believed you shared this vision once, but had perhaps lost sight of it under the pressures of business. Elon frowned. I've never lost sight of my goals. Everything I do is aimed at ensuring a better future for humanity. I believe you, the Pope said gently. But Marco worried about the means, not the ends. He wrote that the culture in your companies had shifted from "how can we make life better for everyone?" to "how can we do things faster and more profitably?" That's unfair, Elon protested. We're tackling the biggest challenges facing humanity: climate change, sustainable energy, becoming a multi-planetary species. These aren't exactly selfish goals. The goals are noble, Pope Francis agreed, but according to Marco, the methods had changed. The human cost was rising. The moral questions were being pushed aside in the rush for progress. The Pope sighed, looking suddenly tired. I experience similar pressures in the Church. The demands of tradition versus the need for renewal. The weight of 2,000 years of history against the urgency of present suffering. Sometimes I too make mistakes in how I balance these tensions. He looked directly at Elon. That's my confession to you. I am an imperfect leader of an imperfect institution. I struggle daily with doubt, with the fear that I'm not equal to the challenges before me. The admission hung in the air between them. Elon hadn't expected vulnerability from the Pope, and he wasn't sure how to respond. Why tell me this? He asked finally. Because I believe you struggle too, Pope Francis said quietly. Behind the confident public image, behind the Twitter posts and bold announcements, the weight of your ambitions must be enormous. Creating. The future is lonely work. The words struck closer to home than Elon wanted to admit. How many nights had he lain awake, wondering if he was pushing too hard, demanding too much of himself and others? How many times had he questioned if he was truly making the right choices? Marco believed in you, the Pope continued. Even when he disagreed with your methods, he never doubted your intentions. In his last letter to me, he wrote that if anyone could help humanity reach the stars without losing its soul, it would be you. Elon looked down at Marco's notebook in his hands. I barely knew him. He knew you, through your work and vision. He studied everything you wrote and said. He believed your early vision. Before the pressures of running multiple companies, before the public scrutiny, was something worth returning to. Pope Francis reached into his desk and pulled out another letter. This arrived last week from Marco's sister. She told me he had been working on something in his final months, a fusion of technology and humanitarian principles he called the Nexus Project. He believed it could transform how we approach global challenges. What kind of project? Elon asked, his curiosity piqued. A new framework for technological development, one that places human dignity and environmental sustainability at the center, not as afterthoughts. The Pope handed him the letter. She's hoping you might continue what he started. His notes are incomplete, but the vision is compelling. Elon scanned the letter. The writing was similar to Marco's, precise, thoughtful, passionate. The sister wrote about Marco's admiration for Elon, despite their differences, about his belief that technology should serve humanity's highest aspirations, not just its material needs. You know who Sister Margot is, don't you? Elon said suddenly, pieces clicking into place. Pope Francis nodded. Marco's sister. She left her tech career after their parents died in a car accident. She found purpose in the church, just as Marco found purpose in engineering. Different paths, same destination. Elon felt a chill. The thoughtful nun who had guided him through Rome, who had shared her own journey from Silicon Valley to the Vatican. She was connected to this story all along. Why the secrecy? Why not tell me directly who she was? That was my decision, the Pope admitted. I wanted you to meet her as a person first, not as an extension of this situation. To see her journey on its own terms. And the box? The mirror? Pope Francis smiled. That was Sister Margot's idea. The mirror has a story of its own, which I'll share shortly. But first, I must ask you, having heard Marco's story, will you at least consider what his sister is asking? Not out of obligation, but because his vision might complement your own? Elon looked again at the notebook and letter in his hands. He thought about Sister Margot's quiet strength, her surprising background, about Marco Bellini, who had worked for him, worried about the direction of his companies, and still believed in him enough to want his help continuing an unfinished dream. Something shifted inside him, not a complete change, but a crack in the certainty he usually wrapped around himself like armor. What if there was another way to build the future? What if Marco and his sister had seen something he had missed? Now, Pope Francis said, noticing Elon's thoughtful expression, about that mirror. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden box. He opened it and took out the small old mirror. What's special about this? It just looks antique. That mirror survived the bombing of a church in World War II, the Pope explained. The Church of St. Lucia in Naples. Everything else was destroyed. The stained glass, the altar, the statues. But this mirror, kept in the sacristy, was found intact in the rubble. Coincidence, Elon said, though without his usual certainty. Perhaps, the Pope nodded. But there's more to the story. A 10-year-old boy had hidden it the day before the bombing. Pietro was the son of the church caretaker. When asked why he hid it, he said he believed it was magical. Magical? Elon turned the mirror over in his hands, examining it more carefully. Pietro said it showed people their real faces, Pope Francis continued. Not just their appearance, but who they truly were. The adults thought it was a child's imagination, but Pietro insisted that when he looked in it, he saw not just himself, but the man he might become. The Pope leaned forward slightly. After the war, Pietro grew up to help rebuild his community. He became an engineer who designed safer buildings that could withstand earthquakes and bombs. When asked what inspired him, he would point to that mirror and say, "I saw myself as a builder, not a destroyer." Elon looked at his reflection in the old glass. The same face he had seen last night stared back at him. "I don't see anything special." "The mirror doesn't create magic," Pope Francis smiled. "It creates a moment of reflection, in both senses of the word." Pietro looked at himself differently, because of what he believed about the mirror. Sometimes we need such tools to see past our usual thoughts. The Pope stood and walked to a small bookshelf. He pulled out a well-worn book and handed it to Elon. "Do you recognize this?" Elon opened it and was surprised to see his own words. It was a printed collection of blog posts and interviews from his early career, before he became famous. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Marco compiled it. He called it the original vision." The Pope pointed to a passage that had been highlighted. "Read this." Elon read aloud. "The point of all this isn't to create cool technology just for the sake of it. It's to transform how people live, to build a future where we solve the big problems: clean energy, space travel, better transportation, in ways that lift everyone up, not just the privileged few." He remembered writing those words long ago, before the production deadlines and investor demands, before the public scrutiny and social media battles. "You said earlier that you haven't lost sight of your goals," Pope Francis said gently. "I believe you." But Marco wondered if, in the race, to achieve those goals, something of the original spirit had been left behind. Elon closed the book, uncomfortable with facing his younger self's idealism. "The world is more complicated than I understood back then. Building the future is harder than writing about it." "Undoubtedly," the Pope agreed. "Reality always tests our ideals. The question is whether we adjust our methods or abandon our principles when faced with obstacles." He gestured to the wooden box. "Sister Margot thought the mirror might help you. Remember something important, not because it's magical, but because sometimes we need to step outside our daily perspective to see clearly again." Elon slipped the mirror back into its box. "What was Pietro's last name?" he asked suddenly. Pope Francis looked surprised by the question. "Bellini. He was Marco and Margot's grandfather." The connection hit Elon with unexpected force. The mirror had been a family heirloom, passed down through generations, from a boy who survived war to become a builder, to his grandchildren who carried on different aspects of his legacy, one through engineering, one through faith. "When you were a child in South Africa," the Pope said quietly, "what did you dream of becoming?" The question transported Elon back decades, to his younger self reading science fiction books, imagining a future of possibilities, before the business empires and public persona, before the wealth and fame. "I wanted to solve problems," he said simply. "Big ones: energy, transportation, making life multiplanetary." He paused, remembering. "But it wasn't just about the technology. I believed we could build a better world. More just, more sustainable." "That boy still exists," Pope Francis said. "Inside you." The mirror doesn't show magic. It reminds us to look at ourselves honestly, to ask if we've remained true to our deepest values. Elon stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the Vatican Gardens. The old gardener was still there, patiently tending to his plants, working with nature, not against it, building something beautiful through daily, humble effort. Marco's Nexus project, Elon said, turning back to the Pope. What exactly did he envision? A framework where technological progress and human dignity advance together, Pope Francis replied. Not technology for its own sake, but technology that serves our highest values. He smiled at the spark of interest in Elon's eyes. Perhaps that's something worth exploring further, not instead of your current work, but as a complement to it. As if on cue, Elon's phone buzzed again. Oscar was still trying to reach him about the rocket problem. But for the first time that day, Elon felt no urgency to answer. Something more important was unfolding here, a conversation that was beginning to shift his perspective in subtle but meaningful ways. Pope Francis watched as Elon silenced his phone and put it away. Your work follows you everywhere, he observed. The price of building the future, Elon replied, though his usual defensiveness had softened. May I ask you something? The Pope's voice was gentle but direct. What would you create if you weren't afraid? The question caught Elon off guard. Afraid? I'm not afraid of anything. I've risked everything multiple times, nearly gone bankrupt. I don't mean financial fear, Pope Francis clarified. I mean the fear of being wrong. The fear of pursuing a path that might not succeed. The fear of letting go of control. Elon fell silent, considering. No one asked him questions like this. People asked about rocket specifications and production targets, stock prices and delivery deadlines. Not about fear, not about the roads not taken. Years ago, the Pope continued, before you became who you are today, did you have ideas you abandoned because they wouldn't be profitable enough? Dreams you set aside because investors wouldn't understand them? Images flickered through Elon's mind. Projects sketched late at night and discarded by morning. Ideas that had excited him, but seemed too idealistic, too difficult to monetize. Visions that his business partners had convinced him to shelve in favor of more practical pursuits. Everyone has ideas they don't pursue, he said finally. Of course. But Marco mentioned something specific in his letters. Pope Francis searched through the papers on his desk. He said you once spoke about a global education system that would use technology to reach children in the most remote and underprivileged areas. A project you called Prometheus, bringing the fire of knowledge to all humanity. Elon's breath caught. He hadn't thought about Project Prometheus in years. It had been one of his earliest ideas, long before electric cars and space rockets. A global network of low-cost solar-powered learning devices connected to a free educational platform. How did Marco know about that? He asked. He didn't give details. He just said you had mentioned it once, in a rare reflective moment. The Pope studied Elon's face. Was he right? Did you have such a vision? It was impractical, Elon said, but his voice lacked conviction. The technology wasn't ready. The business model was unclear. We couldn't have funded it. And now? Is the technology ready now? Elon hesitated. With his current resources, with the advancements in solar power, satellite internet, and artificial intelligence, yes, Project Prometheus was probably more feasible today than he had ever imagined back then. Maybe, he admitted, but my companies already have clear missions. I can't simply change direction on a whim. Pope Francis nodded. Responsibility to employees and shareholders is real. But I wonder... He rose and walked to a cabinet in the corner of the room. I have something to show you. He unlocked the cabinet and removed a folder marked with an unusual symbol, a circle of stars surrounding a tree. Are you familiar with Project Aurora? Elon shook his head. It's a Vatican initiative, begun 3 years ago. very few people know about it. The Pope opened the folder and spread out several documents on his desk. We've been quietly gathering scientists, engineers, ethicists, and faith leaders from around the world. Their task is to design technological solutions to humanity's greatest challenges: clean water, food security, climate change, education, with human dignity at the center. Elon leaned forward, scanning the papers. Project Aurora's plans were ambitious, but practical. Solar-powered water purification systems for drought-stricken regions, sustainable agriculture technologies for degraded soils, educational tools designed specifically for communities without reliable electricity or internet. This is... Elon picked up one page showing a device remarkably similar to his old Prometheus concept. These are good ideas. Really good. They're more than ideas now, Pope Francis said. Small pilot projects are already running in 20 countries, but we lack the technical expertise and manufacturing capacity to scale them. He pulled out another sheet, this one showing a comprehensive roadmap. Project Aurora isn't seeking profit, though the technologies could certainly be profitable. It's seeking impact, measurable improvements in human well-being and planetary health. Elon studied the roadmap, his engineer's mind automatically identifying bottlenecks and opportunities. Who designed these systems? A diverse team, including, until his death, Marco Bellini. The Pope watched Elon's reaction. His Nexus project was actually a component of Project Aurora, the ethical framework ensuring technology serves human flourishing. Elon set the papers down, his mind racing. Some of these designs reflected approaches he had considered years ago, but had set aside for more commercially viable projects. Others solved problems in ways he might have approached differently, but respected nonetheless. "Why show me this?" he asked finally. "Because humanity's challenges require all hands," Pope Francis said simply. "The Church has reached but limited technical capabilities. Your companies have technical brilliance, but are constrained by commercial pressures." He leaned forward. "What if there were a third path, not replacing your existing work, but complementing it? A path where your original vision, technology lifting all of humanity, could flourish without the constraints of quarterly earnings reports?" Elon was silent, processing the possibility. Part of him wanted to dismiss it as impractical idealism. Another part, a part that had been quiet for too long, resonated with the vision laid out before him. "Your companies can continue their important work," the Pope continued, "but perhaps a small portion of your time, resources, and brilliant mind could help Project Aurora succeed. Not for profit or fame, but because it embodies the future you once dreamed of building." Elon picked up the paper showing the educational device again. It was uncannily close to his original Prometheus design, yet improved in ways he hadn't considered. "This device," he said. "How many have you built?" 500 prototypes. They're being tested in communities from rural India to the Amazon." Elon nodded, mentally calculating how his factories could produce millions of such devices. How his satellite network could connect them. How his solar technologies could power them. "What would you create if you weren't afraid?" Pope Francis asked again, his voice gentle. "Perhaps the answer is already within you, waiting to be remembered." Elon stood looking down at the Project Aurora documents, a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. For years, he had focused on his company's missions: sustainable energy, space exploration, transportation, artificial intelligence, important work, world-changing work. But had he narrowed his vision too much? Had he forgotten other dreams along the way? I didn't invite you here to convert you to Catholicism, Mr. Musk, Pope Francis said, breaking the silence. Or to judge your choices. I invited you because humanity faces challenges that no single institution can solve alone. These Aurora projects, Elon said, tapping the papers, they're good, but scaling them would require resources, expertise, supply chains, all things your companies have in abundance. The Pope nodded. While the Church has global reach, trusted relationships in the world's poorest communities, and a perspective that considers both material and spiritual dimensions of human flourishing. Elon picked up the education device diagram again. I could improve this design, make it more durable, more efficient. I'm sure you could, Pope Francis smiled. That's precisely why I wanted us to meet. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Sister Margot entered, her eyes briefly meeting Elon's with a new understanding between them. I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Holiness, but Mr. Musk's assistant is quite insistent that he take an urgent call. Elon's world came rushing back. The rocket valve problems, the launch delays, the investors, the deadlines. Reality intruding on this strange, reflective moment. You should take it, Pope Francis said. We've kept you long enough? Elon hesitated, then nodded. Thank you for your time, Your Holiness. This has been unexpected. Life's most important moments often are. The Pope gathered the Aurora documents and placed them back in their folder. Take this with you. Review it when you have time. If it sparks your interest, Sister Margot can connect you with the project team. As Elon accepted the folder, Pope Francis reached into his desk drawer and removed a worn leather journal. One more thing. This belonged to Marco. His sister thought you should have it. The journal was filled with handwritten notes, diagrams, and reflections. Unlike the technical notebook from earlier, this seemed more personal. Marco's thoughts on technology, ethics, and purpose. I've made no decisions about Project Aurora, Elon said, not wanting to make promises he might not keep. I'm not asking for decisions today, Pope Francis replied, only that you remember the boy from South Africa who dreamed of changing the world, and consider whether his vision might be even larger than what you've built so far. Sister Margot led Elon from the Pope's office. As they walked through the Vatican corridors, she said nothing about her connection to Marco, and Elon didn't ask. Some understandings didn't need words. Outside, Layla waited anxiously by the car. Finally, Oscar has called 6 times. The valve issue is worse than they thought, and now there's a guidance system problem. They need your decision on how to proceed. Elon nodded, but found himself strangely calm. Tell him I'll call in 5 minutes. As Layla stepped away to relay the message, Sister Margot spoke. My brother believed in you, Mr. Musk, not just in your intelligence or drive, but in your heart. He thought you were one of the few people who could truly change how technology serves humanity. I barely knew him, Elon said again. He knew you, she replied, echoing her brother's words from earlier. Through your vision. The question is whether you still know yourself. Before Elon could respond, she handed him a business card with a simple phone number. When you're ready to discuss Project Aurora further, call me. No pressure, no timeline. The choice is yours. And if I choose to focus on my existing work, then we wish you well and continue our separate paths. Sister Margot's smile was gentle, but her eyes were serious. But I don't think you would have stayed for this entire conversation if you weren't already questioning whether those paths should remain separate. Layla approached again, holding out Elon's phone. "Oscar is waiting." As he took the phone, Elon felt the weight of the moment. In his hands, he held symbols of two paths, the phone connecting him to his empire of innovation, and the Aurora folder representing a different kind of future. Not necessarily opposing paths, but different emphases, different priorities. "Thank you," he said to Sister Margot. "For everything," she nodded, and stepped back as he entered the car with Layla. As they drove away from the Vatican, Elon looked down at the folder, the journal, and the wooden box containing the mirror. Then he picked up his phone and called Oscar about the rocket. Problems. The conversation about valves and guidance systems felt surreal after his meeting with the Pope. Yet, as he gave technical directions and made decisions, a new thought was forming in the back of his mind. A thought about bridges between worlds that had too long remained separate. "So, how was the Pope?" Layla asked, as their private jet rose above the clouds. The Rome skyline shrank beneath them, the Vatican becoming just another building in the Rio. "Ancient city!" "Different than I expected," Elon replied, still processing everything that had happened. "Different how?" "More human." Elon stared out the window. He asked good questions. Layla raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. She had worked with Elon long enough to know when he was deep in thought. "Oscar says they've found a temporary fix for the guidance system. They can proceed with testing while waiting for replacement parts." Elon nodded, only half listening. His mind was still in that simple room with Pope Francis, still turning over the questions that had been asked. What would you create if you weren't afraid? Are you building the future in a way that honors your original vision? Once Layla moved to the front of the plane to work, Elon opened Marco's journal. The first page contained a quote: "Technology without humanity is meaningless. Humanity without purpose is lost." The pages that followed were filled with a brilliant mind's wanderings, technical diagrams next to philosophical questions, efficiency calculations alongside ethical considerations. Marco had been thinking deeply about how technology and human values could evolve together rather than in opposition. One entry caught Elon's eye. "Met with the Aurora team today. Their vision aligns with what I've been seeking. Technology that serves human flourishing without treating people as mere users or data sources. But they lack the technical capabilities and scale to realize their vision. They need someone who can build and deploy at global scale. I keep thinking about EM and what he said years ago about Project Prometheus. If he could see what Aurora is building, would it reawaken that original vision? The world needs his brilliance, but directed toward our highest aspirations, not just market success." Elon felt an uncomfortable twinge. Marco had seen through him somehow, seen both his capabilities and his compromises. He set the journal aside and opened the Project Aurora folder. Inside were detailed plans for technologies addressing clean water, sustainable agriculture, emergency medical care, and education. Each design was thoughtful and practical, but they all needed refinement and, more importantly, a path to large-scale production. With his company's manufacturing capabilities, supply chains, and engineering teams, he could help scale these technologies to reach millions, perhaps billions of people. But would his board members approve? Would his investors understand? Could he justify diverting resources from his existing missions? The questions swirled until he found himself reaching for the wooden box. He opened it and took out the old mirror again. "Show me my real face," he whispered, feeling slightly foolish. He studied his reflection in the wavy glass, seeing the same features as before. But this time, something else happened. Perhaps it was the angle of the sunlight streaming through the plane window, or perhaps it was his own mind making connections. But for a brief moment, he thought he saw a younger version of himself. Looking back, the boy from South Africa who had dreamed of changing the world, whose ambitions had been about impact rather than wealth. Elon set the mirror down, shaken by the experience. He pulled out his tablet and began sketching a new design based on the Aurora education device, but improved with his company's latest technologies. Solar charging that was twice as efficient, materials that could withstand extreme conditions, satellite connectivity through his existing network. As his fingers moved across the screen, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the pure joy of creation without constraints, of building something simply because it mattered. Hours passed as he sketched, calculated, and refined. Layla checked on him once but retreated silently when she saw his intense focus. This was Elon in his element, not the CEO or the public figure, but the engineer and problem solver. When he finally set the tablet down, he had created something new. Not just an improved device, but the beginnings of a framework for how his companies could partner with Project Aurora without compromising their existing missions. A bridge between worlds. He picked up his phone, hesitating for just a moment before dialing the number Sister Margot had given him. "Mr. Musk," she answered on the first ring. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "I've been looking at the Aurora plans," he said. "I have some ideas I'd like to discuss." "I'm glad to hear it," she replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm not making any commitments yet," Elon cautioned, "but I think there might be a way forward that makes sense for everyone." "Sometimes the first step is the hardest," Sister Margot said, "but it's also the most important." As Elon ended the call, Layla approached with a concerned expression. "Everything okay? You've been drawing and making calls instead of dealing." "With the rocket crisis." "Everything's fine," Elon said, surprised to find he meant it. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the constant buzz of anxiety that drove him had quieted. In its place was something else. A sense of purpose that felt both new and familiar, like returning to a path he had left long ago. "Actually," he added, "I think everything might be better than fine." 6 months later, Elon stood before the executive team in the company's glass-walled conference room. Behind him, a presentation displayed a simple title: Project Light. "What you're proposing is a significant departure from our core business," said Vance Wilson, the chief financial officer. His expression was skeptical. "Creating technologies specifically for the world's poorest regions? Where's the return on investment?" It was the question Elon had expected. 6 months ago, he might have avoided this conversation entirely, knowing how his investors and executives would react. But something had changed since his meeting with Pope Francis. "The return isn't just financial," Elon replied. He clicked to the next slide showing a global map with bright points of light. Each light represents a community that would benefit from these technologies. Clean water, sustainable energy, education, medical care. "I understand the humanitarian appeal," Vance persisted, "but our shareholders expect growth and profit. This project would divert resources from our primary mission." Elon looked around the table. Some executives nodded in agreement with Vance. Others looked curious, waiting to hear more. "What is our primary mission?" Elon asked, surprising them. "To make money? Or to accelerate humanity's transition to sustainable energy? To make life multiplanetary? To solve big problems?" "All of those things," said Elena Reyes, the chief operating officer. "But we need profitability to achieve those goals." "Of course," Elon agreed. I'm not suggesting we abandon our existing products or markets. Project Light will operate as a separate division, using just 5% of our resources. He clicked to the next slide showing financial projections. Initially, yes, this is a cost center, but within 3 years, these technologies will generate revenue through partnerships with governments and NGOs. Within 5 years, they'll be profitable. Vance looked skeptical. These communities can't afford our products. They can't afford our current products, Elon corrected. But what if we designed specifically for their needs and constraints? Simple, durable, affordable. The debate continued for hours. In the past, Elon might have simply overruled opposition or pushed through his decision. This time, he listened. He acknowledged concerns. He adjusted the plan to address legitimate issues. What surprised his team most was his patience. The Elon they knew would have erupted at resistance, calling people fools or threatening to fire them. This Elon was different, still intensely focused, still brilliant, but somehow more balanced, more willing to hear other perspectives. When the meeting finally ended, most of the executives had cautiously endorsed the project, though Vance and a few others remained unconvinced. "That was unexpected," Elena said, staying behind after the others left. "6 months ago, you would have steamrolled any opposition." Elon smiled slightly. "6 months ago, I was a different person." "What changed?" she asked. Elon considered the question. How could he explain his conversation with Pope Francis? The story of Marco Bellini and his sister? The ancient mirror that had somehow helped him see himself more clearly? "Let's just say I remembered something important that I'd forgotten," he replied. 2 weeks later, Elon stood in a small cemetery outside Rome. The morning sun warmed the stone markers and birds sang in nearby cypress trees. Sister Margot stood beside him as they looked at Marco Bellini's simple grave. "He would be pleased," she said. "Not just about Project Light, but about how you're approaching it." "What do you mean?" Elon asked. "You're not just building technology. You're building bridges between profit and purpose, between innovation and wisdom." She bent down to place flowers on her brother's grave. Marco believed those bridges were possible. He just couldn't figure out how to build them alone. Elon nodded, thinking about the past 6 months. After returning from Rome, he had spent weeks reviewing Marco's journals and the Project Aurora plans. He had met with Sister Margot and the Aurora team several times, combining their vision with his technical expertise. Project Light was the result, a new division within his company dedicated to creating affordable, sustainable technologies for the world's most vulnerable communities. Not charity, but a genuine business with a different set of metrics for success. "I never properly asked," Elon said. "How did you go from tech executive to none? That's not a common career change." Sister Margot smiled. "After our parents died, I questioned everything: success, money, purpose." Marco went deeper into engineering, believing technology could solve humanity's problems. "I found a different path in faith and service." "And now those paths are converging," Elon observed. "They always were," she replied. "We just couldn't see it." As they walked back to the car, Elon asked the question that had been on his mind. "Why did you become my guide that day? You could have sent anyone." "I wanted to see for myself what kind of man you were," Sister Margot admitted. "Marco believed in you, but I needed to form my own impression." "And what did you conclude?" "That you were brilliant but restless, accomplished but searching, powerful but not always at peace." She looked at him directly. "And that you might be ready to remember the vision that first set you on this path." Elon thought about his childhood dreams, his original purpose before fame and fortune complicated everything. Your brother saw something in me that I had lost sight of. We both did, Sister Margot said. The question was whether you could see it too. Back at the hotel, Elon reviewed the latest updates on Project Light. His team had been working around the clock to develop prototypes. The first test deployments were scheduled for the following month in rural India and Kenya. His phone buzzed with a message from Oscar about the newest rocket test. The guidance system problems had been solved months ago, and launches were back, on schedule. His companies continued to thrive, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But now, alongside those familiar pursuits, something new was growing. A project that integrated technological innovation with human needs in a way he had once dreamed about, but had set aside as impractical. Elon pulled out the old mirror from its wooden box. He had carried it with him since that day at the Vatican. In its tarnished surface, he saw his reflection clearly now. Not two separate selves, but one person who had found a way to reconnect with his original purpose while carrying forward all he had learned. "Thank you, Marco," he said quietly to the empty room, "for helping me remember." 1 year after his meeting with Pope Francis, Elon stood on a stage in front of a crowd of journalists, business leaders, and humanitarian workers. Behind him, a large screen displayed the Project Light logo, a simple light bulb with rays extending outward like a sun. "Today, we're officially launching Project Light worldwide," Elon announced. "After successful pilot programs in 12 countries, we're ready to scale these technologies to reach millions of people." The screen showed images from the pilot sites. A village in Kenya, where simple solar panels powered water purification systems. A school in rural India, where children used the educational devices that had evolved from Project Aurora. A medical clinic in Honduras equipped with diagnostic tools that needed no constant electricity or internet. "These aren't just products," Elon continued. "They're bridges, connecting communities to resources, connecting technology to human needs, connecting profit to purpose." As he spoke, Elon spotted Sister Margot in the audience, seated next to Pope Francis himself. The Pope had made the trip specially for this announcement, an unprecedented show of support for a business venture. "Many people have asked what inspired Project Light," Elon said. "Why would a company known for luxury electric cars and rockets to Mars suddenly focus on technologies for the world's poorest communities?" He paused, looking out at the expectant faces. "A year ago, I had a private meeting with Pope Francis. I went in skeptical, expecting platitudes about charity and faith. What I received instead was a profound reminder of my own original purpose." Elon glanced at the Pope, who nodded encouragingly. But the story begins earlier, with a man named Marco Bellini, an engineer who once worked for my company. Elon's voice softened. Marco believed that technology should serve humanity's highest aspirations, not just its material desires. He saw that my companies had the capability to solve problems for those most in need, but weren't focusing there. The screen displayed a photo of Marco. Thoughtful eyes, gentle smile. Marco left my company because he felt we were moving too fast, prioritizing speed over careful consideration. At the time, I dismissed his concerns, but after he died, his sister and Pope Francis shared with me his vision. A framework for developing technology that places human dignity at its center. Elon, click to the next slide, showing the first prototype of the education device. What affected me most wasn't just Marco's ideas. It was the discovery that his vision aligned perfectly with dreams I had abandoned years ago. Dreams about using technology to lift all of humanity. not just those who could afford premium products. He looked directly at the cameras. The Pope didn't try to convert me to Catholicism. Sister Margot didn't try to make me feel guilty about my success. Instead, they simply asked me to remember the boy from South Africa, who had dreamed of changing the world for everyone, not just for a few. Elon pulled the wooden box from his pocket. The Pope gave me this box containing an old mirror that belonged to Marco's grandfather. The story goes that it shows people their true selves, not just who they are now, but who they might become. He smiled slightly. I'm not suggesting there's anything magical about this mirror, but looking into it, I remembered something I had forgotten amid the pressures of building companies, meeting deadlines, and satisfying investors. Elon set the box down on the podium. What the Pope said that changed me forever wasn't a religious teaching or moral lecture. It was a simple question. What would you create if you weren't afraid? The room was completely silent now. Fear takes many forms. Fear of failure, fear of ridicule, fear of making less money, fear of being wrong. Elon's voice grew stronger. I realized I had abandoned some of my most meaningful ideas because I feared they wouldn't be profitable enough or would distract from more lucrative pursuits. He clicked to show the global map with points of light representing Project Light communities. The technologies we're launching today could have been developed years ago. The capability was there. What was missing was the will to prioritize impact alongside profit. Elon looked toward Pope Francis and Sister Margot. The real gift the Pope gave me wasn't just the reminder of my original purpose. It was the revelation that I didn't have to choose between success and service. That the path forward wasn't either or, but both and. The final slide appeared. A split image showing a rocket launching toward Mars alongside children in a remote village using Project Light tablets. Project Light doesn't replace our core missions. We're still building electric vehicles, solar roofs, and rockets to Mars. But now, we're also creating technologies specifically designed for the billions of people most often left behind by technological progress. Elon stepped away from the podium to stand directly before the audience. A year ago, Pope Francis showed me something I had forgotten. The face of the boy I once was in South Africa, who didn't just dream of technical achievements, but of a more just and sustainable world for everyone. He picked up the wooden box again and opened it, gazing briefly at the mirror inside before closing it. That boy never really disappeared. He was just waiting to be remembered. As the audience rose in a standing ovation, Elon felt a sense of completion. The companies he had built would continue to push the boundaries of what was possible. Project E. Light would extend those benefits to those most in need. The bridge between worlds was finally under construction. And in that moment, Elon Musk, billionaire, innovator, space pioneer, felt like himself again. Not just the self he had become, but the self he had always been meant to be.